Well, we're just going to keep thinning this herd on out. So, results from South Carolina obviously came in last night, February 29th. And as of the result, of course, one who came in third place, Tom Steyer, dropped out. Now, I say third place, but it was not a close third place. Most of you probably already know that. Um, Joe Biden, of course, ran away with the primary here in South Carolina. Had a moment like we saw Bernie Sanders have, of course, in the Nevada caucus. Now, Pete, of course, came behind Tom Steyer. And the news has just broken. Pete Buttigieg has dropped out of the 2020 Democratic primary race. He's out. Now, what's the significance of this? Well, Pete was certainly one of the media darlings, but I believe we saw from the last debate, Pete Buttigieg was most certainly on his hind legs. He was desperate. It was very clear in the debate. He was, grabbing at every straw possible to try and make some sort of a comeback to stay relevant and stay in this whole thing. And it just wasn't working for him at the end of the day. He kept interrupting all throughout the night. As Kyle over on Secular Talk described it, tried to filibuster to basically silence Bernie to keep people from hearing Bernie's responses to some of the, things he would lob out Bernie's way and, would try to smear Bernie with. He would try to silence him so no one could hear a response. But nonetheless, this is a guy who we saw rigged coin tosses go in favor of in Iowa. Okay, Bernie won, of course, the popular vote in Iowa, and yet somehow Pete still pulls out with more delegates in Iowa. Then we get to New Hampshire, and they pretty much run neck and neck for New Hampshire. Okay, now, of course, Nevada, Bernie runs away with it, but now we get to South Carolina, and Pete drops out. So all that time, once again, that you've pushed this candidate along, he doesn't make it anywhere. Now, for all the people that thought that the Joe Biden campaign was dead in the water, how do I put this? You're about to see something referenced from the Bible, pretty much. You're going to see a Lazarus. You're going to see someone rise from the dead. The Joe Biden campaign was not dead. Okay? And that's become very clear considering that two of the people who came within the top 4 in the South Carolina primaries have now dropped out, narrowing your choices down to Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders as the 2 frontrunners at this point. Now, who's going to potentially end up being the nominee with Pete dropping out, Steyer dropping out? Well, we're really starting to narrow that field now, aren't we? So obviously you've got Joe Biden, but Joe Biden could have a really, really, really bad day come Super Tuesday. It's just a fact. We've all been talking about it. He's not been campaigning properly in these Super Tuesday states, and that very well could come back around to bite him in his butt. Okay? That's fact number 1. Fact number 2. If it's not going to be Joe Biden, who could we be looking at if they try and take this away from Bernie again? So obviously you've got the other billionaire who's got plenty of dough to sling around, okay? Michael Bloomberg, okay? You've got to really start looking at Michael Bloomberg now that Pete and Tom Steyer are out of this race. Start looking at Bloomberg, but who do I fear is the real threat at play? So you're going to have people out there like the Bill Maher's of the world who have brought up Amy Klobuchar, for example. I don't see Amy Klobuchar being the one. Maybe she is. Maybe she is. You've got to start looking at all of them. But the one that I say keep your eyes on the most has been that snake in the grass who literally just said recently she would be willing to win the nomination through a superdelegate count, Elizabeth Warren. So if Joe Biden starts flopping in these Super Tuesday states, and Bernie's doing great, but he's not having Nevada moments, again, who's been trying to pivot themselves as the alternative Bernie Sanders this entire time? that slithering snake, Elizabeth Warren. Okay? She's been pitting herself to be the better alternative to Bernie Sanders. I'm younger. I'm a woman. Why don't you get out and support me? We run on the same policy. Blah, 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 blah. So, of course, a lot of her things have backfired and bit her in the ass. She's realized that, and now she's trying to turn back up the heat with the progressive message. Okay? And we just had our lovely friend over at TYT, Cenk Uygur, talk about how he thinks that the Warren campaign is now going to have a resurgence. Wonder why. Maybe Cenk knows a little something there since he is running for politics now himself. I don't know. A lot of people may disagree with that and say, oh, no, Cenk's not an insider. Cenk's the money out of politics guy and whatnot. But let's be clear. We have seen the TYT network certainly jump behind some establishment folks. So if it were to come out, I wouldn't be surprised. But who we can say without a doubt is going to be an insider would be Elizabeth Warren. Because while she's pivoting herself to be that alternative to Bernie Sanders, and as a last-ditch effort, that I'm sure the DNC would give it to her instead of Bernie. Now, if she's an alternative to Bernie, why would they do that? Simple fact, she's not a clear alternative to Bernie Sanders. She is a person claiming to be an alternative to Bernie Sanders, when in fact she is actually far more of a corporate hack than Bernie is on his worst day. Pure and simple. I mean, it's a fact. You've got Harry Reid coming out saying he knows Warren would be more pragmatic on health insurance, and then what did we see Elizabeth Warren do with Medicare for All only just a few months ago? That major flip-flop on the Medicare for All thing. So there you go. You know, that's just one of the issues. Then we've got the history of lying. Then we've got the way she's tried to stab Bernie in the back. You can't trust this woman. She's going to say whatever she thinks she can or needs to try to get what her agenda is across. She'll throw anyone under the bus and she'll say whatever to try to rile some people up to support her cause, and then she'll throw you under the bus if she gets what she wants. Okay? It's just that simple. But do I see the DNC as a last-ditch effort possibly going for her instead of Bernie? Of course I do. Is it going to be their first choice? No. But it is a possibility. And that's why I see her potentially staying in this race. But anything about Joe Biden dropping out, I'm going to tell you, if Joe Biden drops out now, I'm going to be highly surprised at that one. If Joe Biden drops out, you can almost guarantee that they're going to try and rig it away from Bernie to give it to Warren. And I will say this. If somehow, some way, in spite of this now, Bernie makes it clean to the convention, wins it clean on the first ballot, the whole 9 yards, I will be thoroughly surprised. And you can bet that the DNC, the entire time, will be actively pooping their pants as it happens. They don't want Bernie to get the nomination. And they certainly didn't want Tulsi to get that nomination. They made sure to silence her up very well. Okay? So yeah, Pete's out. It's more great news that we're getting rid of some of these majorly flawed candidates. But now you've got to really start watching some alternatives because the field's shrinking, and we know once there's less people there to dilute that vote, and Pete has snagged him a few delegates, you can rest assured those delegates will probably go to some corporate hack at the convention. But, you know, start keeping your eyes out because the DNC is going to really start turning the pressure up now, and we'll just have to see what happens.